Hey everybody. So I, have been using MobLab for several years. It's something I really enjoy, both in terms of getting students engaged. I'm gonna fall because of this thing. Both in terms of getting students engaged in the material, and really, I think the one that I get most excited about is that students build an emotional connection with the material. And it's not like, I love you, economics, but it's, the emotional connection of, I can reference, okay, remember when we did this game, and every time they remember it perfectly. Getting students to remember what we did in class seems to be one of the hardest things that we all do, but this really kind of makes a lot of the concepts salient and gets students engaged in a way that, certainly just explaining it doesn't, but, to be able to do this wonderful thing in a quick and efficient manner is really great. One of the things too is, we talk about things like supply and demand and perfectly competitive markets, which are sort of a little abstract and maybe not the most realistic thing ever. So to show them, through using, say, the double auction market, like the Vernon Smith 1962 paper, we can say, okay, well, supply and demand does work under these conditions. This isn't just sort of some theoretical hoopla that we're throwing out and that they have to remember. So it's really cool to be able to actually prove these concepts that we're talking about. And it's just one of these things too that I just think it's fun. It's fun. I'll play along with the students as they go through these experiments. I'll make fun of them for losing money and different things like that. I encourage the students to talk and interact with their neighbors, joke around a little bit. And for me, that's kind of the biggest thing. You want to lessen that social distance between your students, especially in larger size classes. But even in smaller classes, you develop a study mate and you work in groups and different things like that. And it develops a social connection between my students that really, I think, helps and makes the class a lot stronger. It makes discussions easier. People are more willing to talk, things like that. So I use MobLab in a variety of ways. A lot of it is some of the things similar. Here's me like a week or so ago using the supply and demand game. And so at this point, it's sort of part of the grade in my class participation. Sometimes I'll grade them a little bit on how well they do in the game, and that's fun. It kind of really gets their competitiveness going. After you play each game, there's a little leaderboard, and I make sure to show that so students will get really excited and competitive. And that's one of the comments I'll even get on my evaluations. Is like, I'm so competitive. I really enjoyed MobLab for that reason, because it kind of gets them engaged in a different way besides just participating in normal class activities. So they'll get really into it. It's super fun. But I use MobLab in a variety of ways. Sometimes it's really effective in terms of introducing a topic. Supply and demand, I think we are all relatively familiar about how market interactions work, but I'll just go ahead and have them play through double auction market before I even talk about supply and demand. And so this for me is a great way to introduce these concepts and say, hey, you guys figured out equilibrium by yourself. You figured out all of these concepts that we're going to go over, and then as we go through them, it's able to kind of undergird their understanding and really kind of prepare them in a way for what we're about to go through. Sometimes I'll do things later on where we've gone through the concept and then we'll play through the experiment, and that works really well too, just to kind of get them a little bit of review of what we went through too. And then sometimes I'll just use it after we've gone over something. And it really just depends on different things. So, but the main thing for me is this is, an active learning activity. I don't, contrary to what I'm doing right now, I'm not a huge fan of hearing myself speak. And so this is one of the things that I really wanted to do, just to go ahead and have students do something else. And as I've used MobLab semester over semester, I've integrated a lot more activities where I have a pretty robust set of games and experiments built out. But I started with 2 or 3 games, and so built it out from there. And so just to show you kind of a couple of the games that I normally use, I generally start off with the comparative advantage game. Of course, in principles classes, and I normally teach principles of micro or macro. Just we want to go over comparative advantage in trade. That's kind of the big first major model that we go through. And so here they're making decisions about producing fries or burgers, and they could choose between how much time they want to, prepare for fries and burgers, and go from there. One of the really cool things about MobLab is they have these built-in modules that will go through and allow you to, so you play like an instruction video, because learning the instructions is important, certainly in its own right, but one of the things where I've had issues before is that if students don't understand the instructions, they're not going to have as much fun. So play the instruction video, do a short instruction comprehension survey, and then go into the game. I tend to use these a lot because I have a tendency to kind of go off the rails and kind of wing it too much. So this is as much about the benefit to the student as it is controlling myself. And so once you play through the game where they're just producing by themselves, then they're able to trade with their partners, and you're able to show kind of the main concept that trade is beneficial, that with trade you're able to consume at a point outside of your production possibilities frontier. And the results compile immediately. You're able to show that and show students that, hey, you guys just made simple decisions about how to allocate your time between building burgers and fries, and you guys basically showed what we showed a minute ago with, say on the PowerPoint slides or during lecture. You guys proved that, hey, you're able to consume outside of your PDF. Right? So here, that's what happens, is you see the consumption is outside of the PDF here. And it's really cool to be able to do that in a very quick manner, because I think that's one of the things, having done kind of the paper and pencil experiments before, is it just takes a long time. And it's a lot of effort on my end, and I'm a little lazy. It's hard for me to say. I'm a little bit lazy, so getting away. Oh man, I remember when I used to know how to speak. But it's one of those things where it compiles instantaneously, and I'm able to show the results, and they're in an easy way to interpret, and so students can understand them. They're easy to go through. There's instructor guides that basically, will go through and explain what are some learning objectives, what's going to go on throughout the module, how to integrate it into a lesson plan, so on and so forth, and how to go through the results, most importantly. So that's something that's really cool. This is the sort of typical double auction supply and demand game, where basically you're trading oranges. So certainly this game has a lot of appeal. Sorry. So that's the appropriate reaction. There's no reaction. But no, this is sort of the typical double auction game. And part of the way that I'll use this in class is I'll not only have them play through a typical, regular market, I'll set it to where the supply or demand curve shifts, so I can talk about supply and demand curve shifts. I'll change the elasticity of the curve so I can show them, okay, elasticity is not, just kind of this relatively dry concept. This has a lot of applications for how equilibrium changes in this model. I'll put price controls, taxes on the market to show them how that changes. And so kind of using this in a way that maybe you would use it in terms of like an experiment to show, okay, here's kind of the baseline condition, here's how things change when you introduce these different aspects. Can be a really neat thing, and it's neat to students to be able to see that, that process work out. So what we're going to do today is play the asset market game. So this is, basically you're buying and trading assets. We'll go through the instructions in a minute. But I use this in my Principles of Macro class when, one of the things I do is I kind of end up talking about the 2008 recession a lot, especially certainly its effects on the Federal Reserve and handling monetary policy, but also about, the market bubbles that happened with the housing market. And so I basically just do this to say, okay, let's see if you guys can actually create a market bubble or not. And oftentimes, unless you're using experienced traders, you're going to end up with a market bubble. And so my students do a pretty good job of ruining the market. And I make sure to tell them that. So it's one of the things where I really enjoy doing this, and my students really enjoyed it as well. This is a little bit longer, more involved game, so I do make sure to go through the instructions, do an instruction comprehension survey. But certainly, one of the things I think that's really nice about this platform is that you play one game, maybe 2 games, students pretty much get it. Students are very technologically savvy and play enough games, whether it's Fortnite or whatever, that they can kind of figure it out after the first time. And oftentimes they'll do practice round games or something like that too, just to kind of help them get acclimated. So, okay, I'm gonna pass it off to Emily.
Thank you. So you may have seen that this session is a hands-on learning session. So this is the point in the time where these user cards are going to come a little bit in handy while I go over some of the instructions of the game here. So if you don't have a card, what you'll be doing is you'll go to www.moblab.com or download the app on your phone, and you'll use the user card, so that whole email, user, for example, user1@moblab.com, password moblab123, all lowercase. And if you need any help, Chris is an expert, he'll be walking around, so just go ahead and raise your hand. And once we get the game underway, we'll do another eye check. If you're using a mobile device, either phone or tablet, you will need to download the app for the best experience. And you can participate in teams, and there will be some prizes because we know we're speaking to a group of economists and finance professors. So when one thinks of bubbles, it's pretty remarkable about how they occur. You can think of Tulip Mania or the South Sea bubble, or more recent experiences like the tech bubble or housing bubble. But as Chris said, sometimes you feel that disconnect between your students. I know when I guest lecture and I bring up the 2007 subprime crisis, I get some faces in the audience that are like, what's that? So this is a nice game to help connect your students to asset pricing and bubbles and crashes. So it's hard to refute, in terms of how the subprime prices, that these prices weren't right. However, in the asset market game, you can clearly show how the prices of these assets clearly deviate from the fundamental value. In this game, you'll see that prices often soar to heights that even the most optimistic traders will not want to pay, and besides demonstrating that bubbles are real and can happen, students also learn about the factors that attenuate bubbles. And one of the most robust experiences is that you can play multiple rounds of this game, and you can see that reduces the formation of speculative bubbles. So the premise of this game is simple. I'm going to go ahead and give you a visual. You have some wealth, and you need to decide how much to keep in a bank account or how much to keep in a stock that pays dividends each round. Our game is inspired by the groundbreaking experiments of Smith and Schuneck and Williams and Boxian and Holt's classroom experiment. At the beginning of the game, everyone in this room, or all of your students per se, receive the same amount of cash and the same number of shares in a company. So you'll see we have our Tulip Tech company, and with 6 shares and possible dividends of 40 cents or $1. And that will be random and those will be the random per period dividends. And you can see here, my computer, we're playing 10 rounds of about 45 seconds. So our first round is almost elapsed here that we're previewing. And despite our best efforts to make it easy to calculate the asset's maximal payout, if held to the end, your students will experience many clearly defined bubbles above this maximal payout, as well as thrill as fools wisen up or disappear in the market. So a little terminology before we let you loose to play the game. To buy or sell your bids, you can use either, it's a double auction. So you can use this slider here to either buy or sell your stock. Or alternatively, you can sell at the highest bid or buy at the lowest ask. So at this juncture, I'm going to go ahead and run the game. There will be a group size of 20, so it looks like just eyeballing here, there'll be 2 groups. So I'm going to go ahead and run the game. So in our game, the stocks had a $0 redemption value, and after the trade concluded in the 10th round. And if we go ahead and look at our results here, the value of the stock is based on its expected flow of dividends. So that's one of the things you should have been discussing with your partner in terms of how you were deciding what to value those assets for. And since there was a 50-50 chance that the stock was 40 cents or $1 at each round, we have the max stock value, this red line here, as well as what we would expect, the expected stock value. So this is your optimal asset price versus expected. So generally you'd expect to see some trades within there as to what you value the asset. We can definitely, so despite the decreasing value, we see the stock traded way above the expected value in a room of economists and finance professors. So perhaps the prize or the incentive might have lured you into trading above these expected prices. Groups, you did a little better. So without further ado, I'm going to pull up our scoreboard here and show our top trader is user 19. Excellent.
You win a prize.
And then let me show our top 5 here. Get some other folks on the board. So if you're in this top scoreboard here, make sure you see me after. We do have some more smaller. Oh, there's a strong answer.
The whole row is colluding.
So definitely stick.
Econ.
Man, this is some pretty good traders.
So as professors, we tend to think about a lot about incentives and what drives our students. And I tend to think this scoreboard, seeing your name up there, being recognized by your peers, tends to drive students to perform really well in these games. By no means do you need to have prizes like we have here or cash payouts like you would in a typical experiment. Students are just very happy to be learning in a non-traditional method, and the pride of seeing their name up on that scoreboard. So generally in this lesson, we follow up the asset market game with the Keynesian beauty contest. Just for discussion about speculative hypothesis for asset bubbles. Or why some traders purchase assets at higher prices believing that they can resell to naive traders at perhaps an even higher price. Or theory of the greater fool. In this game, I'll give you a visual. In this game, you're asked to simultaneously guess a number between 0 and 100 that's closest to 2/3 of the group average. So you'll use your little slider here and guess your number. So I'm going to go ahead and make our group size. And I'm going to go ahead and run the game. And I'll go ahead and pull up the results. Oh! Winning choice of 23. We have a couple winners. So let me make sure I get your prizes. Since this is a lower stake game, you get some lower prizes. I'm sorry. So how a sophisticated person guesses in this game depends on their beliefs about the others in the room. So with an integer, our integer of 2/3, we can assume that nobody in this room was using a dominated strategy or jersey picking. So we see that our Nash equilibrium is getting lower and lower. So the average choice was 39.5. So if we multiply that by our integer of 2/3, that brings our winning choice to 23. So different levels of sophistication can help explain why people might believe speculation will pay off with a Nash equilibrium of 0. So we're going to play this game one more time, just to see what will happen when we repeat this Keynesian beauty contest game. Let's go ahead and look at our results. Oh, winning choice is 17. So as we know, if we repeat this game indefinitely, we would end up at our Nash equilibrium of 0. So if we keep repeating this game, some of our instructors do 5 rounds, you'll see this move eventually down to 0, which is our Nash equilibrium. And just for our scoreboard here, I'll show our top five participators. So make sure you see me afterwards, and I'll congratulate you personally with some small prizes. So in conclusion of our asset market virtual game here, we do have a reflection survey, and I'm just going to go ahead and preview that. I won't ask you all because honestly I would be very interested to see all your answers, but I won't take your time. So basically, at the end of a game, generally we find a good way to spur a discussion with students is to have them do a short reflection survey. Sometimes we find that if students are able to iterate what they experienced, then it's a little bit easier to have students raise hands in the classroom. So some of the things I asked you to discuss with your partner as you were paired up in twos today was what was your approach to buying and selling stocks in this market? How do you think that behavior in the guessing game was related to the asset market? And I already gave away the answer of why people might choose the speculative pricing in the asset market game. And then talking about bubbles and really, what can we do to identify bubbles in the real world? So this is an opportunity to where your students can take a subject and go a little bit deeper and relate it back to the real world. So beyond games, we also do have a survey platform as well, as I just previewed. One of the fun things with MobLab, beyond just a platform for games and experiments, is you also have the ability to create question-based experiments and blank surveys. So you have that ability to get feedback from an audience that you might not have the ability to walk around in a lecture day to day. So that's a tool that I like to use a lot in terms of getting feedback and always figuring out how we can make the experience better for students. So to conclude, I just wanted to ask you guys, what did you think of the experience by show of hands? Was it something different that you've experienced in a conference before? Is this different than the norm?
Yes.
Could you see your students being a little more engaged in this activity? Excellent. Yes, questions? Sure, so of course the Cengage partnership is the best, that's adding no additional cost to students.
I'm sorry, with price? Yes. Oh, yeah, I mean, if you're using a Cengage product with MindTap, doesn't cost the students anything extra. MindTap is, MindTap by itself is $130. They get everything. But that would be crazy, because if they got an unlimited subscription, it's $119. So, plus any other course they're taking on campus, they don't pay anything for those materials. So,
but for this, the MindTap kicks in the fall, right?
MindTap kicks in the fall.
So if I wanted to use this product this semester, how much would it cost my students?
So as economists, we are very straightforward about our pricing. We know that's a question that we get often about our pricing model, and we truly embrace it, and I'm glad you asked the question. So this is our website here, www.moblab.com. This is our pricing page. We do economies of scale for economists. We don't really lie about that. And I'd encourage you all as well to sign up for an instructor account. All of our instructor resources are free. My role in MobLab is to lower your fixed cost of getting up and running with games and experiments. We are aware that it's a new pedagogy, and that incorporating any new curriculum in your class takes some time. So my job is to lower that fixed cost. And when you sign up for that instructor account, you'll be able to play around like we did today and demo all of our games. I saw a question in the back.
If you have students in groups or a small class or at random times, are there bots that will play in this game to get you to a large enough number of participants?
Yes, and I was doing that a little bit during our asset market game as folks were joining later. But you can either pre-set up a game to run all play only robots, or you can add robots to your group because given any day, you don't know how many students are going to walk into your class. So you have the flexibility to do both games in the classroom on the fly, or schedule games outside of the classroom. And I know some instructors who are a little bit tighter on time, they like to structure the instructions in a practice game outside of class. That way when students come to class, it moves a little bit quicker than perhaps we did today.
Any other questions?
So I've seen econ and finance, do you do statistics or any of the other topics that you guys have?
We don't have statistics currently, but definitely we're looking to grow horizontally. We have our whole in-house engineering team and design team, so the answer is not yet.
Maybe Mark can help you.
Exactly.
Good. Thank you so much.